The main idea of today is that we are going to suddenly allow people to square root negative numbers, and we're going to do that with the use of a brand new kind of number, a number you've never heard about before. It's called the imaginary number. Imaginary number is a very bad name for it because they're not any more imaginary than any other numbers we work with. But I will say that they are definitely not on our real number line. So back when you were a youngster in second or third grade and you learned about this wonderful thing called the number line, and then at some point you learned there were negative numbers on there as well. The numbers that we're using are not anywhere on this line. This is the real number line, and so they're just called imaginary. And the imaginary number is the square root of -1. So we're saying, like, look it, that's really not a possibility, but we're at a possibility. We're going to call it I. So when you see I means the same thing as square root of -1, and the square root of -1 is I. And if we're going to define or say every time we see I, it's square root of -1, we're saying, look it, this is no longer a letter. This is now a number. The number that this is the square root of -1. And if I square this thing, if I take I and I square it, I'm going to get -1. So I is a number that when squared gives you -1. Weird. Nothing on here will do that. 1 times 1 will not give you -1. -1 times -1 will not give you -1. This weird number that I'm going to call I squared does give us -1. Here's how we're going to use it, though. I don't want you guys to freak out too much. Basically, if you're asked to take the square root of something and that thing happens to be negative, that means you're going to do all the same stuff you would normally do if it were positive, but you're going to slap an I in there saying, look it, this is imaginary, I really can't do this, I'm just kind of imagining that I could do it, whatever. So like, if I'm trying to take the square root of -25, obviously the answer is not 5, because 5 times 5 is not -25. Clearly it's not -5, because -5 times -5 is not -25. What we're going to do is say, let's pretend like it's positive. So the square root of 25 is just 5. But it was actually a negative number, and so I'm just imagining that I can do it, so I'm going to slap an I on there. This tells the person who's looking at the answer, look, I square rooted it, but it was negative, okay? Like, I really shouldn't have done it. Same thing over here. Square root of -64. If that was a positive 64, I would just say this answer is 8, but it's a negative number, so I'm going to tack an I on there, just like that. So at the risk of repeating myself too many times, you're going to do these problems the same way you did them when they are positive. So the same notes as we did in standard 2.1, we're doing again. But if it's a negative number, slap an I on it. So this guy, if this was positive, I would just say it's 1/2. But because it was a negative number, I'm tacking an I on there. And now finally, let me move myself over here. Whoa! So that was not that weird. The last thing is, for this guy, okay, I should have had this written down already. There's this list of numbers that I want to keep in mind. Don't really care about 0 and 1, but technically they are on that list. These notes might start to look a little bit familiar. If I'm asked to square root something, I will check to see if it's on this list. If it is not on this list, I will find the biggest number that divides 18 evenly that is on the list. So 18 not on my list, but this number here that's on the list goes into 18 exactly 2 times. It's the biggest and only number that goes on the list. So I will take this and rewrite this as negative perfect square times whatever else is left. I will square root the part that I can. Oh, but it was negative, so I'm going to tack an I on it. And then this I couldn't square root, so root 2. So that's the first few examples, and I'll do the other few examples in another video. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have questions. Office hours, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If I'm not there, send me an IM. I might just click on the wrong link. I'm always at my computer from 3 to 3:30, and I'm almost always in office hours. And when I'm not, I should be. So just send me a link if I'm not there. It's by mistake. See you.